a lot of people put in extra hours.
Yeah.
But over time, if you just are the only one putting in extra hours, you could become burned out or resentful, quietly going about doing your work, doing good work. If you do that, you will get recognized. If you're doing all those things and you're having conversations with your manager and you're still not getting recognized, that might be a clue that you might not be in the right environment. I would just say, too, always be curious and
Mm.
keep an open mind when it comes to learning. Know that you don't have all the answers. Nobody's perfect.
Sure.
We're all human, and that goes without saying.
Well, welcome back to another episode with Career Kickstart Conversations. I'm your host, Sarah, and today I'm joined by a really great guest, Melody. I'm going to pass it over to Melody for a quick introduction, and then we'll jump into today's topic.
Okay, I am Melody Whitford, and I have been at SAS here in Cary for 25 years, and I recently announced my retirement. And my path to getting there, it all started. I grew up in Garner, which is a little south of Raleigh. Graduated from high school there, and went to a junior college for about 12 months, and then jumped right into the workforce. I went to work for the state of North Carolina and held a couple different positions there. I quickly learned that to get ahead, I was going to need a college degree to achieve my objectives. So I decided to start part-time classes at NC State. Eventually got accepted and was able to finish my degree. And after that, I got a job with SAS, and I've been there ever since.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And today's topic, we're talking about how to get noticed at work. So I'll just start off with, what does that mean to get noticed at work, and what does that essentially look like?
Yeah, I think there are traditional ways when you get recognized formally, like you get bonuses or promotions, raises, things of that nature. But there's also intrinsic rewards that you get, like thank you notes, or maybe you get high scores on a satisfaction survey, or you get high ratings.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you feel like, why do you feel like employees do get overlooked?
That is a hard question to answer. I don't know that you're necessarily overlooked, but I believe that maybe there's a feeling that people maybe are promoted over you, or you didn't get the recognition that you thought you deserved. So I think being overlooked may be a feeling as opposed to something that's actually happening.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because Harvard Business Review, they had put out that 83% of professionals say being seen as a high performer is critical for their career, but only 29% feel like leadership actually sees them or values them. So I guess, what would you say can be done, like, for that feeling, or maybe to feel like they are being valued or seen?
Right. So I think it's very important that you own your advocacy.
Hmm.
So, what does it mean to advocate for yourself? So, you want to make sure, first of all, that you're having regular communications with your manager, your direct manager. And to the extent possible, you want to try to become visible to levels of leadership that are higher than your manager. And I think that's kind of a struggle that some people have, that they don't know really quite how to go about doing that. But I'll give you some specific examples that I've seen.
Yeah.
I've seen folks who spearheaded a newsletter for their department, or volunteered for assignments instead of waiting to be asked to take up a project.
Yeah.
Those are some ideas. But then at the end of the day, too, you have to always be communicating with your manager. So I recommend scheduling regular one-on-ones at some regular cadence, even if it's just quarterly, to check in and make sure they're aware of what all you're doing. Because sometimes you just go about quietly doing your job, and folks don't even know what you've been working on a lot of times, especially if your manager's very hands off.
That makes sense. So what would you say for folks who feel like they are doing that, they are communicating, maybe they are taking on extra projects, but they still don't feel like they are being like noticed at work. What other reasons could be for like a company to not be able to notice it, or I
Hmm.
guess, yeah, have those maybe like those promotions or like on the
Right.
back end of it?
Yeah. So, quite honestly, it can be a financial issue as far as budgeting. So, if there's a budget that's finite, and most companies have one, the manager has to distribute those scarce resources among a number of people on the team. So the fact of the matter is if you have 5 excellent performers, you've got to figure out how do I assess each one in a way that means that I'm rewarding the very top performers with the scarce amount of money that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And what would you say for someone who does stand out? What does that like look like? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Or what signals to this is someone who stands out at work?
Right. I mean, it is the visibility thing and creating value.
Mm.
You have to figure out how do you want to create value, and you want to make sure that the value you're creating aligns with your personal goals. So we talked earlier about how a lot of people put in extra hours,
Yeah.
but over time, if you just are the only one putting in extra hours, you could become burned out or resentful. So you want to be sure that it's maybe a period in your career where you're okay with putting in those extra hours, and you're not going to become resentful. You're going to be okay with it at that point in time, because life changes and you might not always be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get in a situation where you're being taken advantage of.
That makes sense. And what would you say for people who aren't like naturally outspoken for how they could still be recognized for their contributions?
Well, I would put myself in that category. I think there is a fine line between self promotion and self advocacy. I know that's one of the things that you
Yeah.
have coming up later. And you want to be sure that you are performing in a way that gets noticed, but at the same time, you don't want to overdo it in terms of raising awareness of yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'll kind of jump to that. So what would be an example for people? What would be that line? Like what would be an example of self-advocacy, and then what's an example of self-promotion?
Right. Approaching a leader when maybe they're in the elevator or in the hall and start talking about your accomplishments recently, that sounds like self promotion. Also, if you're dominating a lot of conversations in meetings and you're not allowing others to speak, or you asked too many questions,
Hmm.
like there's a fine line there. You want to ask questions that are truly informative and that help um, progress the conversation, but you don't want to ask so many that people start to get annoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say are some mistakes that, no, that's obviously one, but like what are a few other mistakes that people make when they are trying to get noticed? Because like you said, that is a feeling. And sometimes I think that feeling can get in your head and you might be doing a little too much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really think it is a lot about quietly going about doing your work, doing good work.
Yeah.
If you do that, you will get recognized. And if you're doing all those things and you're having conversations with your manager and you're still not getting recognized, that might be a clue that you might not be in the right environment.
Absolutely. And like you said earlier too, like communication, you can have those conversations with your manager of, is there other people in the company I can meet and network with and have coffee chats and just kind of get your name out there and meet them, or on the side without everyone there, is there other projects in the downtime I can take on? Like I think those are things too that can help you get
Oh,
noticed.
absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And what do you feel like, I know we kind of touched on it, but trying too hard would look like in the workplace?
Yeah, I do think it's that domineering type of
Yeah.
personality. You definitely want to speak up
Yeah.
and you want to feel confident doing that, but you also want to hold space for other people and listen for their ideas too.
Yeah. And what would you say are like 5 tactical examples of how someone can stand out at work? I guess like what would be the first 5 things that come top of mind?
hmm So this one is pretty easy for me because I've lived it for so long. Number one is, like I said earlier, finding a way to create value
Yeah.
and striking a balance, both personally and professionally. And like I said earlier, creating value means, what is it that you see needing to be done that maybe isn't getting done?
Do you think that's a conversation like maybe you're earlier on in your career and you're not able to find that gap? Like do you recommend going to your manager and saying,
Yes,
what value can I add?
a lot of it is feedback and being comfortable with asking for feedback and receiving it, more importantly. But one of my favorite performance reviews that I ever had, my manager wrote one sentence because he was a man of few words. He said, Melody sees what needs to be done and does it.
I love that.
And it was one sentence,
Yeah.
but I got an exceptional rating,
Yeah.
exceeds. And it meant the world to me, to know that that's how he felt. Like, I don't have to babysit you.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads to the next one that I'm going to mention. Create value by being present,
Mm.
being reliable, consistent, and dependable.
Yeah.
Those are really important throughout your career. Find ways, create your network of support so that you can be present, because it's especially important as women. If you do decide to have a family, it's just a fact of the matter that women are the primary caretakers, and you're going to have to also be present for your family. And so you also want to find a company that respects the need to have a work-life balance for that reason, and that will support you throughout all the stages of your career.
And do you think that's a conversation that should be like had of where you're at with a manager so expectations are the same? Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that's something you should keep internally to yourself and just know like if this doesn't align, maybe this isn't an opportunity for me?
Right. I think you've got to have the conversation
Yeah.
and let them know what's going on. That is most important, because sometimes the manager might even find out that you are eligible for some kind of benefit
Mm.
that the company offers, or that it's federally mandated, like family medical leave. So it's important to speak up and let them know where you stand. However, I will say it's a business, and you're going to be depended on to be there and to be present and performing when you're there.
Yeah.
So it's a fact that you kind of have to face it. It's, do I want to kind of be okay with where I am, or do I want to get ahead? And if I want to get ahead, I have to find a way to be present most of the time. I was just speaking with a friend of mine. She's just had her third child,
Yeah.
who's now an infant, and she's thinking about going back to work. And we talked about how with her first two, even, she would have to take her computer along at home and work from home and log in and get the job done
Yeah.
regardless. And how is that going to work with a third child? So those are all questions that, you have to answer for yourself, but understand that your manager and the company do expect you to be there. And it also impacts morale on your team, because if other people are having to pick up the slack constantly, they're not going to feel as much camaraderie towards you, which is the next topic I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Behind dependability and being present is building strategic relationships, and camaraderie is very important, because you want folks on your team to think highly enough of you that they're going to support you when it matters, and vice versa. They're going to be there to cover for you when you need it, and you'll be there to cover and support them. So I would just say, make sure you try to gain some type of self-awareness. And I recommend doing a 360-degree feedback type of tool. to ascertain from your manager, from your peers, if you have customers. Try to get as much information as you can and be open to it.
Yeah.
Some things you'll say, I'm not going to change this. I accept this about myself. But there are other things you can really learn from and do better at.
I feel like I haven't heard that 360, and it's really, yeah, I feel like that could be really
And it doesn't have to
beneficial.
be
Yeah.
formal. You can just
No.
ask for
Yeah.
it. Some software that is used for human resources information storing will have an option in there that you can send a note to somebody and get feedback. But it could be just as simple as an email or a conversation.
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I kind of jump over to like remote and hybrid. I think so many people are either fully remote or hybrid, and will say like, am I not getting noticed because I'm remote? Some, especially like larger companies where some people are remote and then half the office is maybe in office full time. I've talked to people that'll say, maybe I'm not getting promoted over someone who is in office. What would you say to those folks who are remote, let's say fully remote? Like, is it the same for everyone across the board? Does it make a difference?
Yes, I would point to the next thing that I was going to talk about is communication. Communication is key to everything in life. And you need to really get comfortable with expressing your ideas in a professional manner. In written form as well, you need to be concerned about formatting. Is the information you're trying to convey consumable? You do not want to write books to people in executive leadership. You want to provide a synopsis and then details to follow, which they can read if they want to or have time. So you need to understand how to organize communication. You need to pay attention to grammar, spelling, and word choice. All of those things are very important because you want to leave people with a good impression.
Yeah.
And I would say that that is probably the priority when you're remote is you want to make sure those lines of communication are very open. And going back to the dependable, you want to be sure that if someone is pinging you, that you jump on and you answer them in some form or fashion within a reasonable time frame. One of my pet peeves was always sending emails and never getting a response from people that I thought, why can't you manage your inbox? Just it's a simple thing at the end of the day. You can just manage it. There's tools available in Outlook, for example. So get back to people. That will earn you a lot of trust and credibility. And it really comes down to manners.
It does. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And what do you, I know you kind of said a little bit, but how else can you stay top of mind, whether it be to your manager or maybe executive leadership where you don't have that relationship going in office and seeing them and just being able to be present in front of them? Like, how can you stay top of mind to them?
Right. So I would say performance is key. And you can be a high performer and not be present. So you have to be both. You have to be present and you have to be a good performer. And if you want to get ahead, you need to find out what the expectations are for a high performer and set goals for that and objectives. And talk about that with your manager. Talk about your accomplishments. Talk about opportunities for growth. What do I need to be doing to get to where I want to go? And at the end of the day, that is really all you can do. And if you've done all those things, like I said, it is a competition for scarce resources. If you're feeling that you're getting overlooked, then it might be time to explore other opportunities outside of your current department or your company. And then finally, I would just say too, always be curious and keep an open mind when it comes to learning. Know that you don't have all the answers. Nobody does, not even the people at the very top. Ask good questions and try to learn as much as you can on an ongoing basis. Try to keep up because things change so constantly nowadays.
Yeah.
So you just need to stay on top of it and Be comfortable with ambiguity and not knowing the answers,
Yeah.
and admit when you don't know and say, I need to look into that. Don't be too overconfident. And then also, I would say, going back to being confident, you want to present yourself so that you come across as credible, but at the same time, if you don't know something, you don't want to look like you have answered a question and it just not be correct, and then that comes back to bite you. And
Yeah.
another thing I'll say about that is owning your mistakes. So if you do trip up and you do make mistakes, the important thing is to admit to them and then try to do better next time.
Yeah.
Try to learn from them and try to catch them before other people do. That's a big thing that I try to tell my daughter is make sure that you're double checking for accuracy. Accuracy is huge. And yes, no, everybody's going to make a mistake. Nobody's perfect.
Sure.
We're all human, and that goes without saying. But on the other hand, if you can come up with a system, a way that you organize your work where you're doing checks and balances and you can kind of head off other people discovering them before you do, and you can get ahead of that. And then that's another way to create value. Getting the job done, accuracy and professionalism and manners. And I think you are going to go far.
Amazing. And I know you talked a little bit on like the kind of overconfidence and performance. How would you recommend employees build visibility without being performative?
Yes, and actions speak louder,
Yeah.
right? I think that's really what it comes down to. And this is one way in which you can really stand out, and that is become an expert at troubleshooting and problem solving. And the way that you would do that is to become as familiar as you possibly can with the systems that are used and how they integrate with each other, because everything is about data nowadays. So you want to be able to follow breadcrumbs, follow evidence in order to put things together on your own. Some people call it connecting the dots. I know that's kind of a buzz term, but that really is true. Like you put the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah.
And if you can show that you've done that to your manager before going to them with an escalation or a problem, they're going to be impressed
Yeah.
versus them trying to tell you the answers. That is not really something that managers want to do. They are looking for you to take the burden off of them.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to take a burden off your manager, anything that you can do to remove a problem from their desk, coming across their desk, that is going to help you.
Awesome. And I kind of want to wrap it up with maybe just leaving it on a positive note for people who do feel invisible at work, just kind of summarizing it for those people who feel that right now. Like, what would be your first piece of advice for them?
I think really looking at yourself and truly being honest and asking yourself, am I really doing all the things that I think are necessary to get recognized? If you're in a position where you've had to be out of work a lot, say, for instance, you have had sick children, for example, and you've had to be out a lot or something like that. When you're there, when you're present, you want to make sure that you are really showing up in a way that is focused.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, continue to have conversations with your manager about what your particular situation is. Because the reason I say you kind of have to look at it honestly is I've seen folks who, in their minds, they are performing, they're doing all the right things, but there's a factor, like something like that, that they're sort of dismissing. But you kind of have to say, well, this is a point in my career where I'm going to have to cruise a little bit to get through whatever the hard thing is. And then I can come back behind that and maybe make up for it. But I do think that if you are a good person and you are working hard, you're checking in with your manager to make sure you're meeting their expectations, you go quietly about doing your job, but you also speak up in a professional way and your communication is good, I really think that is all you can do. And then, like I said, you have to make a determination about, are you okay with where you are, or do you want to explore another company or department that might value your contributions a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about the reflection on yourself. I think that's a hard thing to do,
Mhm.
and sometimes it can be uncomfortable to really look at the full picture. And like you said, communication. Like, don't bottle it up and get resentful. Communicate, exactly what your expectations are, what you're feeling, what you're going through. Um,
And I think
yeah,
people stay in jobs sometimes
yeah,
where they know that they're not fulfilled, they're not getting the recognition that they think they deserve, but they just stay.
yeah,
And I understand there's reasons for that
sure,
financially or where, like I said, wherever you are in life, whatever stage of career you're in. But you have to, again, go back and say, am I okay with this because of these circumstances that I find
hmm,
myself in? Or do I want to find a way to do better
yeah,
and find a way out of this situation, maybe into something that will be more fulfilling? So
yeah.
I guess what it comes down to is really personal responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Melody, for coming on and sharing your insights. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I would just say, going back to my earlier comment about figure out what it is that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Ask questions, talk with your manager, talk with leadership, read the tea leaves, the in between the lines, whatever it takes, but try to find out what is a gap in a need that is not being met for your company or your department. And try to work with people using your relationship building skills, your organizational skills, your communication skills to try to meet that expectation. And I really think that does make you stand out. If you do it in a professional way, not like overbearing, but if you present yourself professionally and that you're trying to do the right thing, and you make sure you check in with your manager that what you're doing will meet expectations, that you're getting your primary job done. That's a big thing too.
Yeah.
Like, don't let that go. You got to get your primary job accomplished and then go look to see, is there an assignment that I can take on or a project that will really get you recognized because you are just making things happen. Nobody has to come to you and tell you,
Mhm.
okay, this is exactly how I need you to do this job. You just know what you're doing and you learn a lot from that too. You get the experience and it will allow you to build on um, that whatever accomplishment comes out of it, and you learn so much.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights. And if any listeners have any questions, comments, or stories they want to share, just drop them below.